Dumelang Marise. Hi guys, I'm back again with another tragic sad video. This time we're all the way in Limpopo in a small town called Phasha where this tragic story took place. Here we revisit the horrifying case of Lucas Phasha, a father, a husband, a lawyer, and the man who murdered his own children. Limpopo is one of South Africa's most peaceful provinces, home to wide open fields, warm people, and close-knit families. But in February 2020, a dark shadow fell over the small village of Phasha near Burgersfort. News broke that 4 children aged just 2 to 9 years old had been found dead, and the man responsible was their own father. His name was Lucas Phasha, a former attorney. He once stood in courtrooms defending others, but this time he would stand there for his own crimes. To neighbors, he seemed like any other father. He drove a car, wore neat suits, smiled in public, but inside that home, something was breaking. Lucas lived with his wife and their 4 children, Katlego, aged 9, Joyce, aged 7, Tshepo, aged 5, and little Adel, just 2 years old. They lived in a modest home in Phasha, a place where people looked out for each other. But sometimes, evil hides in plain sight. Friends say the marriage had been rocky for years. There were rumors of arguments, jealousy, and accusations. Lucas began to believe that his wife was unfaithful, that she had betrayed him and even infected him with HIV. Whether that was true or not, his anger grew into obsession. He started posting strange messages online, rants about revenge, sin, and death. One post read, "You'll see what happens next." People thought it was just anger. No one imagined he was planning the unthinkable. Lucas Phasha wasn't just any man. He was a former convict, once jailed for murder and attempted murder years earlier. But he had been released on parole, trusted to rebuild his life. In hindsight, that decision would cost 4 innocent lives. In early 2020, family members began noticing Lucas's behavior change. He became quiet, withdrawn, unpredictable. Some said he had completely lost touch with reality, but no one could have known how far his mind had gone. On the morning of February 17th, 2020, Phasha woke up to the sound of roosters and children getting ready for school. Lucas' children were dressed neatly, school uniforms ironed, shoes polished. Neighbors saw them walking with their father down the dirt path, and that was the last time anyone saw them alive. When the children didn't arrive at school, teachers thought maybe they were sick, but by midday, their mother grew worried. She called relatives, friends, even neighbors, but no one had seen them. Then the phone rang. Police were on the line. The first body was found on a dusty path near the bushes, a few hundred meters away. The second, then 2 more further down the road. All 4 lifeless, each one bearing the marks of violence. Katlego, Joyce, Tshepo, and baby Adel gone, their lives stolen by the man who was meant to protect them. It's the kind of crime that makes an entire nation stop and ask why. As the news of the missing children spread, neighbors grew uneasy. Calls flooded the local police station. Something terrible had happened, but no one yet knew how deep the tragedy ran. By late afternoon, the police had combed the area, and then the first bodies were discovered. The village fell silent. Parents held their children close. Tears, disbelief, horror everywhere. Katlego, Joyce, Tshepo, and Adel, innocent lives taken brutally. 3 of the children had been stabbed. The youngest, Adel, just 2 years old, beaten up with a stone. The method, savage. The motive, unfathomable. Lucas Phasha did not flee. He stayed at home. When police arrived, he spoke calmly. He pointed them to where he had left his children. His confession was chilling in its simplicity. There was no hesitation, no denial. Investigators were horrified. The bodies were found in 2 locations within a radius of about 3 kilometers, each scene marked by violence, each child a victim of unthinkable rage. Neighbors recalled seeing Lucas with the children that morning. They had no reason to suspect anything. After all, he was their father. And yet, in a single morning, the lives of 4 young souls were extinguished. The local police began to piece together the timeline, social media posts, text messages, and witnesses' statements painted a picture of a man consumed by anger and jealousy. His paranoia had metastasized into a deadly obsession. The mother, devastated, could hardly comprehend what had happened. Family members struggled to make sense of the horror. How could a man, once trained to uphold the law, become the instrument of such evil? His posts online were finally understood in their grim context. Threats that once seemed empty or angry, words now revealed a sinister truth. Lucas had planned the murders. Katlego, Joyce, Tshepo, and Adel, the laughter of the household, silenced forever. Toys lay untouched. Chairs remained empty. A home once filled with life, now reeked of grief. The news quickly spread beyond Limpopo. South Africans, horrified, tried to understand how could a father commit such a crime. By the evening of February 17th, Lucas Phasha was officially in custody. He had confessed in full, leading the police to the evidence, the scenes, and the bodies of his children. But while the law had caught up to him, the emotional toll on the village, the mother, and the community had just begun. The first vigils were held the next evening. Neighbors, friends, and relatives lit candles for the 4 children. Flowers were laid, prayers whispered. Yet no vigil, no prayer could bring back Katlego, Joyce, Tshepo, and Adel. In that small village of Phasha, the air was heavy with grief. The community, once close-knit, was shaken to its very core. The questions began to surface about parole, about domestic violence, about warning signs that had gone unnoticed. The case of Lucas Phasha would not just remain a local tragedy. It would become a national conversation about safety, about accountability, and about the unimaginable potential of darkness in those we must trust the most. After his arrest, Lucas Phasha was brought to the Polokwane High Court. The nation watched, horrified, as the trial of a father who murdered his own children began. The courtroom was tense. Relatives of the children sat in silence, their grief barely contained. Journalists scribbled notes, cameras recorded every moment. For Lucas, the trial was straightforward. He had already confessed. There would be no debate about guilt. The only question left, what punishment was deserved? The prosecution detailed the crime in painstaking, horrifying details. Witnesses testified about the children's last day, the chaotic morning, and the discovery of their bodies. Every testimony painted a picture of a father driven by jealousy and rage. Katlego, Joyce, Tshepo, and Adel, their lives were described in loving detail. The prosecution emphasized their innocence. The courtroom felt the weight of every lost childhood. Lucas remained calm, almost detached. He described the murder as if they were necessary, a punishment for what he believed his wife had done. There was no remorse, no apology, no tears for the children he had killed. The defense attempted little. Lucas's confession left no room for doubt. The law had to act. South Africans waited for justice, hoping it would be swift and decisive. Every day of the trial, media coverage reminded the public of the horror. Articles, news bulletins, and social media debates highlighted both the cruelty of the crime and the failings of the parole system that had allowed Lucas to be free. Outside the courtroom, the village mourned. Candlelight vigils continued. Neighbors, friends, and strangers alike wept for 4 children who never got to grow up, and many asked the same question: how could this happen? Finally, the day arrived, June 4th, 2021. The judge delivered the verdict: 4 life sentences, 1 for each child whose life Lucas had taken. Justice had been served in a legal sense, but for the mother, the family, and the community, no sentence could bring back Katlego, Joyce, Tshepo, and Adel. Lucas Phasha would spend the rest of his life behind bars, but the damage, the heartbreak, the grief remained. This trial, while bringing a legal conclusion, also sparked national reflection. Parole laws, child protection, and domestic abuse preventing were all brought into public debate. The tragedy forced South Africans to ask, what could have happened? What could have been done to prevent this? The faces of 4 children forever etched in memory. The laughter, the cries, the little moments, all gone, and a community left to grapple with a grief no words can ever truly capture.